Good morning, guys. Welcome to another episode of Vietnam Innovators. I'm your host, Hal. This is the second episode of the Innovator Show being hosted at our brand new studio. For those of you watching, for those of you listening, no difference. But thank you for all of your support over the last couple of years. The team has grown from the first studio that we had at Centec Tower in Ho Chi Minh City to now our studio here on Nguyen Hue Walking Street. Anyways, we want to welcome our first guest, or rather our guest today on the show. His name's Minh. He's leading the Tyme group here in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. It's a global company, but they have most of their development resources here in Vietnam. I'll have Minh kind of share more about what they're doing here, why Vietnam, and whatnot. Minh, welcome to the studio.
Well, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Let's just start off with you're Vietnamese, American.
Yeah.
Let's start with why you're here in Vietnam. A bit of a personal background, I guess you could say, and then why Tyme as well.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. So I was born here in Vietnam. I was born in 1976. Primarily, I grew up in California. Lived there pretty much all my life until about when I was 25. And then I ended up in Japan randomly, but it was playing semi-professional tennis.
Okay.
And spent about 6-7 years doing that, and realized that I need to start thinking about a career after tennis. So
You didn't make it to the pros.
So
Almost.
I decided, hey, what's my next venture and where do I want to be? And long term, I wanted to be in Asia, and I also had an affinity to return to Vietnam. And that's how uniquely I got into technology. Was I had a company that decided, hey, we want to open up a business in Vietnam, a software development business. Okay. And you seem to be the right candidate. And so, I took the opportunity to move to Vietnam. And I started off in 2008 and was spending about half my time between here and Tokyo. And then transitioned here fully in, I think, about 2013, 14.
Okay.
Along the way, I spent time doing software outsourcing, right? Managing for primarily Japanese companies at the time, and then moving over to product, and then now fintech. Yeah.
Got it. And let's talk about your role at Tyme. I mean, you mentioned you worked for a development company in Japan that brought you here to Vietnam. It was a fairly small one, it sounds like. But Tyme is much larger. I mean, your scope has increased to like general management, essentially, for this big group. What does Tyme Vietnam do for the listeners that are listening in today? For those of you that might be searching Tyme Vietnam before listening to this podcast, very, big presence in Vietnam, but not a consumer presence. Yeah. So maybe you can share about that.
So maybe I'll take a step back and I'll explain what Tyme Group does, because it'll give a better perspective. So we call ourselves serial bank builders. And currently right now we have 2 banks in 2 countries. So the first one is South Africa, and the second one will be launching in the Philippines. Tyme Vietnam is the engineering and product hub for the Tyme Group. And so I like to say that's where all the magic happens, because we're the ones who build the product. It's a combination of product proposition, engineering, and innovation that goes into the products. And then we're the ones who are providing, basically value to our customers.
Okay. Maybe we can talk about the plans for Tyme Vietnam. I mean, the business model here is more about the development and the product. But what do you guys hope to achieve with the team here in Vietnam?
When I joined, this was about 13 months ago, we were about 130 people, and now we're at 270. So we doubled in size, and we'll continue to grow. We're, as a technology hub, we have very interesting and complex problems to solve. So, the first country was actually just in its own way, a very, I wouldn't say easy problem, but a very focused problem. We were building a banking platform for South Africa. Mm-hmm. This was in 2019 where we launched in South Africa. And now we've gotten to, 3 years later, about 5 million users. Mm. And now we're going into the second market, which is the Philippines. And we're not planning to stop there. Mm-hmm. We're going to go to country 3, country 4, country 5.
So you're building a playbook as you go and adapting it.
What we're in the works of building right now is a multi-country banking platform that will serve the needs of these countries that that is going to be our customer. Mm-hmm. And so we'll need a team that is skilled enough to do this.
Mm. Yeah, which is my next point. What makes Vietnam the ideal hub to build this tech business from here? Yeah. I mean, some of these engineers and the teammates that you have, they've never been to South Africa potentially, or the Philippines. Yet, despite that, the team is here, and I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for that. What are they? Yeah.
So there's a bit of history that goes into Tyme, and even though Tyme Bank in South Africa launched in 2019. The group in Vietnam, Tyme Vietnam, was actually acquired by Tyme Bank, the Tyme Group, I think around 2016-17. And that was from Commonwealth Bank of Australia. So the group that existed from that time already had this banking expertise that we wanted to incorporate into our product and carry on. So, even though we say some of the companies only started 3 or 4 years, some of the members have been at Tyme for, I think the oldest person at Tyme has been there for 12 years, right? And some of the more senior guys on average are 5 to 6 years. Mm-hmm. So it's almost challenging to explain the history to people because when they look at the timeline. But, we wanted to start off with a team that was already well vetted, already had experience, and was able to roll out a product quickly. And so with the Tyme Bank offering that we now have in South Africa, we kind of already checked off that box. Mm-hmm. And now we know that, okay, we're able to do it here, and let's raise the bet.
So some of the most talented emerging market banking experts from a technology point of view are actually here in Vietnam. Yeah. It sounds like, yeah.
I mean, I want to keep that a secret because, I'm kidding. But yeah, I think our team is very talented in that aspect. And so, they're solving they've solved some very difficult problems and will continue to solve some very challenging problems coming up.
Amazing. Okay. I mean, aside from South Africa and Philippines, just a side question, emerging markets is the focus. Yeah. I'm sure Asia's on the top of the list. Yeah. Is there a plan already in place for other markets, including Vietnam?
Yeah, so we've talked to many countries right now, focusing primarily on Asia, and Vietnam is one of the countries in the list. India, Pakistan, Vietnam is we'd want to build a product here. Obviously, it makes sense because the product team is here. There are challenges, right? Because there's a limitation in the number of banking licenses because we are a bank, right? So very different than other fintech projects. We're regulated like a bank. So we'd have to come in and either with a partner already with a banking license, or for some reason Vietnam decides that they want to offer more banking licenses and make it available. So I think that's the issue why we can't, or it's very difficult for us to launch in Vietnam. But with some of the other countries, I can't say yet, but we're very deep in discussions to getting a license for country 3.
Okay. Well, at the end of the day, you guys are a fintech firm. There's, according to my notes here, 188 operating fintech firms in Vietnam. Some of them, I'm sure, are banks that are moving towards the digital space. Some have started as anything from e-wallets to neobanks. There's so many classifications now. How does Tyme differentiate from these other fintech companies, not from a business model, but as a team culture or the way that the kind of company operates?
Sure. Yeah, so that's a very good question. When I look at fintech companies, including us as a digital bank, I see 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. So the first one is being kind of the startups, right, who are coming in and trying to kind of prove their their thesis, trying to see if they can have product market fit, and then roll out from there. And I see the other end where you have the incumbents, the traditional banks, and they want to digitize. And we lie somewhere in the middle. So to some degree, we've already had pretty good traction in one country. We're trying to expand our footprint, right? And with that also comes with the culture, because the first 3 years was tough, as with any startup. And we've had a team that have already gone through and have already kind of been battle tested. So that's part of the culture. But the first part is, let's just get it out, let's ship, and let's hope and pray that it works, kind of thing. But now that we've been able to do that, okay, well, we need to build better processes in place. We have the money, so we need to bring better talent. So for us, the culture is kind of taking what you've learned and then growing it as the business grows, right? And I think I mentioned to you earlier, but for us, we're not expanding only in one market. So which I call expanding vertically. I call what we're doing else is horizontal growth. So for us, if anybody wants to work at Tyme, right, it's very interesting because obviously it's in banking, right? And that also differentiates from other fintech products because we're highly regulated. So there's a regulation aspect, but for us, we need to conquer those things as we move into other countries. And the unique thing is, if you are a developer, right, you can move up within your company if you've spent a certain amount of years there and you build a certain amount of products. In our company, right, what we're doing, you will naturally progress horizontally. So if you're building a lending product, you need to actually think that how will this lending product be not only supported in South Africa, but also in the Philippines and whatever country 3 is and country 4 is.
Because of that horizontal trajectory of the company, a lot of knowledge transfer, the knowledge base you guys have built over the last decade is enormous, it sounds like, or the engineers that have been there for a long time. And which is unusual because most fintech companies, people are moving over. Yeah, they have the practical, hard skills, but not necessarily knowledge in fintech. I mean, it's still quite new in Vietnam at the end of the day. So
I mean, it's a very competitive landscape, and we're very lucky to have retained some of our people. So
Okay.
So
but you're always training new people too, of course, I'm sure.
Well, like I mentioned, we doubled our company size, and that was if you think about it, COVID last year, everybody worked from home, so we literally hired over 130 people, and their first day at work was actually from home. So we becoming more mature, we had to add in all these processes, right, of onboarding and training and virtual meetups and things to keep the particularly the new folks engaged.
Launching this product in different countries, it sounds pretty easy, at least from what you described. I'm sure it's not. You mentioned regulation, it changes per country, and I'd love to kind of delve into that subject a little bit. When you're talking horizontal growth, lots of countries on the list, but what are those check boxes when it comes to adapting the product you guys have built to different places?
So if you take a step back and you look at banking, banking in terms of offering is quite consistent across all countries, right? You have origination, somebody creates an account, you have payments, right? You have points and rewards, you have lending, you have investment, things like that. Pretty much to some degree out of the box is consistent across all these countries. So what we're trying to do is that we know that there's these service offerings that we can to some degree roll out, as a out of the box offering. And then from there, you would customize a certain percentage of that depending on the need of the country. So, you point out some obvious needs like, okay, demographics might be different, culture is different. So how does the user interface with that product will be different. So similarly, we have our design proposition where there's the brand consistency across the entire Tyme group. So from country to country, that has to be to some degree consistent. But at the same time, it allows for customization that's unique to that country, right? With respect to copy. Copyright needs to be consistent with whatever people use, right? We can't call a product in one country, but you go in another country, no one understands. There's certain things that might be offensive in other countries that you can't use. So I think we build in that flexibility. That's more at the customer facing level, but then there's also kind of like the infrastructure level that a lot of people don't think of. So for example, payment rails. We might be using a completely different payment rail in the Philippines as opposed to a country, again, South Africa.
Whenever you're in different markets, I assume you need a local expert to help advise the product and engineering team. Are those folks here in Vietnam when it comes to?
So how it works from a structural level is that we have the operating team in that country, right? So we will call build and run. They're the operators. Right. So we have in South Africa right now, we have about 250 people or so doing the bank operations. Yeah. And then, they have to support the customers. And obviously that needs to be in real time. That needs to be communicated more effectively in their language. Right. So, those people will also obviously do the other part of the non-technical aspect of it, right? And the research and provide us input. And we work together quite closely with the teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different. I mean, to put it in more layman's terms for folks that are using these applications more regularly in Vietnam, it's like food delivery, right?
Yeah.
For instance, I mean, we're touching that product here in Vietnam a lot more than, Tyme. It's a different product, obviously, but yeah, it's different, right? On the surface, it's the same, but the payments, the logistics, it's all different. So.
Yeah. I mean, take, for example, the Philippines. You have thousands of islands. So it's a logistic nightmare.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But, maybe the core might be the same, but the delivery, the third-party resources that you're going to be using to deliver it might be quite different.
Yeah, exactly. And Tyme is a pretty well-capitalized venture startup. You guys have received investment from Tencent, from BII, which stands for British Investment something, a big British group from the British government. And it's $180 million total capital raise. Yeah. Tell us about that funding round and why. Well, we'll start with why they invested in Tyme. Start there.
Yeah. So in 2019 we launched in South Africa, and we were the first investment that came in was from African Rainbow, African Rainbow Group, and we were struggling at the start. We were the first fully digital bank in South Africa. Okay. And we were competing against a market that was, I would say, very hard to penetrate, right? There were very strong incumbents, and so for us to be able to penetrate and grow to 5 million customers now, 3 years later, we were able to prove that we can challenge in the way that our business model and it would not only work in South Africa, but most likely it'll work in these other countries as well, especially emerging markets. So what's unique to that, the value proposition for us is that we're not purely digital. So our partnership involves a retail presence, right? So usually a strong retail presence in that country. For example, in South Africa, we have what's called pick and pay and Boxer stores. I think they have like a few thousand stores in South Africa. We're also partnering with JG Summit in the Philippines. That group alone, I think, has something about 4,000 supermarkets and 9,000 shopping malls and residents. So they're massive. So how we partner up with them is there's then the retail outlets, and then we have hardware. So we have a kiosk. And so now you have what we call kind of what we say bridging the physical and digital divide, right? Because in emerging markets, people are not as tech savvy. They're not just going to go and find your app on Facebook, download it, and then
there's a trust issue as well.
There's also a trust issue. So how we solve this is then we put these kiosks within our retail partner stores. And if you walk in, if you've never heard of Tyme, which is our bank and now going to be launched in the Philippines, there's going to be a level of trust there because you say, why is there a kiosk in this store that I shop regularly?
Every day.
It's a big brand, right?
Mm.
And so walking in, you say, okay, well, I can then create an account, fully KYC'd account in 5 minutes and have a debit card in hand. And that's powerful, right? So then I can use this card to buy and earn twice as the amount of rewards. Why would I not use it? And then other things that you can later find out, well, actually, I can then also earn, in the Philippines, I think it was something like 6 or 7% interest. That's actually better than most of the current bank offerings now. Why would I not do that?
Yeah.
Right. So now that it opens up doors for most of the people, and our mission is really to serve the underserved, right? And it's like financial inclusion and really making access to capital, access to money available.
So in the case of the Philippines, you guys are launching a new bank entirely as well from the front.
Yeah. So it's a joint venture with JG Summit, and so they're going to be benefiting tremendously from this because now they haven't really put any money in terms of like development capabilities, but now they have a payments and rewards capability just by partnering with us.
They've completed the ecosystem. They have all these retail points and whatever they have already. Cebu Pacific, I think, is even a partner.
Exactly. So like I mentioned, like with the 4,000 supermarkets and the 9,000 retail stores, we have a huge opportunity to reach customers where we never could have.
South Africa, you mentioned 5 million customers. I mean, that's like at least 10% of the population there, I think, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. How long did it take to go from 0 to 5 million?
So, we launched in 2019. So
2 years. 3 years. Okay. And in the Philippines, what are some estimates there?
So this is...
I'm not sure that's your responsibility, but
this is part of our strategy, right? So it's part of our learning strategy. What we learned in South Africa, what are we going to take from those learnings and move it to
hypothetically should do better on the next one.
And exactly, and that's how we plan to do better. So we plan to reach profitability. So we're not profitable yet, but we plan to reach profitability in South Africa in 4 years. In the Philippines, it's going to be 3 years. And it's really just taking our learnings and focusing on certain demographics early that can generate more money.
Right.
We're still trying to reach everyone, but we're prioritizing certain groups first.
What are those groups?
So we're prioritizing young urban area people, demographics, I think between 25 and about 35.
They're kind of like the Henrys. Do you know what that term is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
High earning, not rich yet.
Yeah.
I think for those of you listening right now, you've probably heard me say that a few times. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a great group to go after. They have some money already. They're not like rich, but they're looking to diversify their investments, optimize their investments. For sure. And those banking solutions at that stage, they're looking to get more innovative, I guess.
Yeah. Say, with their money. And they're already educated in terms of we don't have to spend a lot of effort in terms of having them understand how to use the app, a user offering, right? And then from there, we build a base. In year 2, we'll go to suburban areas. Year 3, we'll go more to rural. So that's really the plan.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I hope to see that in Vietnam, hopefully at some point in a few years.
Yeah, cross your fingers.
Not time stamping anything, but eventually. So we want to talk about the product a little bit more, and taking into account the regional and demographic differences. So South Africa is very different from the Philippines. I would imagine the Philippines, it's like double the population probably.
Yeah, it's about a little over 100 million.
Okay.
South Africa is about 60 or so.
Okay, and it's probably a little younger.
A little bit younger.
A little younger. How do you take into account these differences when you guys are building your products? Do they differ at all between the two countries in terms of what you're offering? Yeah,
so there's certain things that we prioritize over other things. So for example, like I mentioned, you have this kind of out of the box solution that's going to pretty much be consistent across all the banks, right? You have kind of your payments, lending, things like that, right? Credit cards that are going to be consistent. And that will, you have to that should be a minimum to launch. Okay, but then there's other things that, from a product offering that's going to differ. So, for example, we're going to launch a what we call fractional shares and crypto offering. So, and why? Because obviously there's more people in the Philippines spending money on crypto, and they also want to get into investments. But, so crypto being one, but also I think what's going to be really cool is a fractional share. So, somebody who can't afford to buy, a share of Apple can now buy a 10th of Apple or 100 of Apple. So those things are going to be,
And that's not in South Africa.
That's not in South Africa right now.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. But it hypothetically could be, because
it could be, to be honest, there's also the regulatory aspect of it. So those things are actually easier from a regulatory standpoint to offer in the Philippines versus South Africa.
I see. Yeah. Got it. The business has been around for a few years, but obviously the landscape and everything from fintech to regulation, crypto has changed. How do you guys keep up with all those and that evolution? Maybe you can share more about how the product team thinks about that, aside from just using Twitter and whatever else to follow.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we take a step back and you can say your product is sexy and you build more and you have the latest and greatest in technology, that's all great and dandy. But if you can't offer a service that's reliable, because at the end of the day, it's banking. If somebody can't withdraw money or put gas because your service isn't working, then it doesn't matter how sexy your product is going to be. They're going to churn, right? They're going to leave your product. So we really focus on kind of some of the core principles that whatever drives our decision really needs to be, from a product perspective, we need to have our product always available and reliable, right? The second thing is then, are we providing the best service to our customer? Like when they go in the app, are they having the best experience? And the list goes on, but I would prioritize those two. And then actually finally, like, would they be willing to come back and use your product again with this experience, right? So with technology and what we're trying to do, we need to try to fill in those gaps because those are the outcomes we want. So we're not just going to say, hey, we're going to change our technology just because it's the latest and greatest and cool. Is it really going to solve this problem of getting, from 99.9% availability to 99.999 kind of thing, right? So those are the outcomes that we want. And then the technology is the enablement piece of that. Okay. But what we learned over the course of of launching in 2019 is we launched really quick. We spun out this platform in a little over than a year with a very small team, and we weren't able to spend as much time on it to update it. So I would call that South Africa version 1.0. We're now launching Go Tyme in Philippines. That's going to be 2.0. But subsequently, you're going to have another country. That'll be 2. It won't be 3.0. It'll be 2.1, and then 2.2, and so on. So the gap will not be there, and then we'll consistently update the technology as we go. And so the teams themselves, they know that they have to keep up to date. And obviously, you're a technologist. You want to work on the latest and greatest technologies, right? And we promote that, right? As part of kind of our innovation, basically initiative is that, continue to learn. And if it makes sense and it creates value for us, then let's roll it out.
Min, what's next for Tyme? You can't disclose what countries are next and off the
Philippines. I think, our vision is to IPO. 4 years from now, and we don't know where, but that's our vision. So if you work backwards, well, what do we have to do to get there? First of all, we have to at least be operating in probably 3 to 4 countries. We have to at least be looking at another opportunity in 1 or 2 other countries. And for the three or four countries where we are operating, at least 2 of those have to be profitable. So that's a simple version of it. But then now we have to go backwards on that vision, right? So if we go back to where we are today, so what do we have to do from a technology standpoint? We have to build a multi-country platform that can support all these offerings from a regional standpoint as well, or a local standpoint. So it's a very tough challenge for us. And the product still has to continue to deliver value, because at the end of the day, we need to be a business, and we also need to be profitable.
And in each market, you guys have to have a meaningful market share too. South Africa to have 10%-ish within a few years, that's really impressive. And hopefully in Philippines you guys can replicate that success, if not go further, and the markets to come as well.
Yeah.
So Min, I always like to end with a little bit of plug in terms of hiring and recruitment. I know that's very difficult these days.
Yeah.
Super competitive, especially in the fintech space, but for those looking to either move within fintech or from another industry to get into it, why Tyme, and are you guys hiring? Let's start with the easy one. Why are you guys hiring?
We are hiring,
yeah.
And we will continue to hire.
270 today, up to who knows?
We're at least, I would say, at least 300 plus. It also depends on how quickly we launch country 3, for example. Right. But I think what is unique, and I think I mentioned this, is obviously we have a great culture. We were voted top 5 in terms of the best technology companies to work with in 2022, and so those things are great, right? And I mentioned, like, we've gotten a long ways in terms of actually building and running a bank, right? But I think for the people who are really interested in joining Tyme, I think I would actually have to ask them to say, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to adapt? And obviously you have to be, you have to challenge yourself, because, if you come to Tyme, you're going to be doing a lot, and you're going to be growing a lot naturally. And like I mentioned, I think the biggest difference is you're not only going to be growing vertically, but horizontally. So it's that natural growth. And if you're up for that challenge, then Tyme is the place to be. But if you're not, then maybe,
don't apply.
Yeah, no, I mean, the opportunities are there.
Yeah.
But I think that's what we're looking for: hungry, passionate people willing to learn and willing to grow themselves. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Min, if I wasn't working at Vietcetera, I might have to apply. But
yeah, maybe I'll give you an offer, maybe a side hustle.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, Min, thank you so much for sharing about Tyme's mission, its vision, and of course, a little bit about yourself today. And I hope our listeners following today check out Tyme if you haven't already, and please work with Min. I think that wraps up today's episode. Thanks for joining the studio.
Yeah. And if you're interested, please reach out. You just find us on our website or Facebook.
Excellent. Thanks, Min. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Tyme is one of the world's fastest growing digital banking groups, globally building high-tech and high-touch banking experiences in fast-growing emerging markets. Established in 2016, Tyme Vietnam has been the technology hub for Tyme, bringing together engineering and product people who share a global mission to become serial bank builders, shaping the future of banking through technology.